Welcome back to Kenshi. I had some mic issues recording this episode, so I'm doing commentary in post instead of making you listen to a weird robot girl voice threatening to whoop a hungry bandit's ass. But the important thing is this. I tried to set up a martial arts training camp and accidentally made a fight club for every bandit in Shem. In my last video, I kidnapped a slaver boss, and I realized I would definitely need to get combat skills higher before I imprisoned any nobles who actually have an effect on slave farms crumbling. And since I lost my legendary sword in episode 1, and joined the anti-slavers in episode 2, who don't even use weapons, I figured this means I am destined to become a kung fu master. So I pinned a comment asking for efficient martial arts training practices, and I got some helpful advice, particularly this comment that told me I needed to train strength and dodge the most. That way, when my punches do start to land, they'll hit like a truck, which sounded great in theory, but of course, Kenshi had other plans. The first thing I did was go from Spring to Flats Lagoon to buy some building materials. Then, I made my way to Shem and set up shop. I quickly realized that I forgot to grab any books while I was in Flats Lagoon, and had spent all my money on building materials, so I queued up the tech that I could research, just item storage really, and started researching. Then, I got to mining the copper deposit next to my shack. The plan was simple: fill my backpack with copper, run to Flats Lagoon, sell it for books, and train strength while I did it. Almost as soon as I began mining, I was interrupted by some dust bandits, who are presumably mad that I emasculated their leader by knocking him out and leaving him naked in the desert without a weapon. They were giving it all they got when some hungry bandits got in on the action too. Eventually, they forgot all about Vagabond and just started fighting each other. She healed up, and I immediately sent her back in the fight because we could not let that sweet XP go to waste. And where the hungry bandits lack in strength, they make up for in numbers because they beat all the dust bandits. I'm sure it's because I softened them up for them. And then it was them versus me. This is where Vagabond started getting a lot of dodge XP, which definitely was coming in handy. The fights were lasting much longer. Then, a beak thing came through to pick off the bandits so that Vagabond could get back to mining. The sun rose upon day 19, and since her laboring skill was so low, we only had one stack of copper ore. I definitely need more to be able to get strength up a few levels like I wanted to, so she kept up the good work. After a lot of grinding, I got bored and decided to take advantage of the cripples circling around my shack for some easier experience, only for their friends to come out of nowhere to defend them. I kept her in block, and she just kept leading them around in circles, dodging nearly every one of their clubs. This was not what I had in mind when setting up my training camp, but at this point I realized something. This might actually be better training than the original plan. Dodge was now up to 19 and steadily rising. Even martial arts was slowly going up as she started landing a few hits. She ended up getting stuck on the wall and they knocked her out, but since all her food is in a separate backpack, they didn't steal anything from her. Didn't take long for her to wake up and heal, then go loot the beak thing. The hungry bandits took its meat, but I could still take its skin to sell. Then it was back on the copper mining grind. We almost had 2 full stacks and her encumbrance was at heavy, so I would just let her finish the second stack and we'd run to Flats Lagoon. I know it's more effective to have a full backpack, or even better, multiple full backpacks, but I still wanted her to be able to run away from any enemies that were too tough. We arrived on the morning of day 20, and the copper we sold got us up to over 8,000 cats. So I just bought up all the books we could afford and grabbed a sleeping bag for speedier healing between fights and ran back to the training camp. I queued up some tech research, walls, training dummies, a small house, and the next tech level, and waited for Vagabond to slowly figure out how science works. Once she finished her research, I set up the outline for our training camp. The idea here is that she'll load up her backpacks with heavy ore and then walk back and forth through the maze, an idea I got from a Cool Kid Croc video, to level up strength quickly and efficiently. The sun rose over the desert on the morning of day 21, and Vagabond was building what she could with the building materials she had, but it wasn't going to be enough, so we'd have to do the mine grind Flats Lagoon shopping trip again for building materials this time. That's when I was warned of a Holy Nation attack on its way to my training camp. This had me concerned because I didn't want to end up in the Rebirth training camp instead, and with a 20,000 cat bounty, that's surely where they'd take this disgraceful woman. But on the bright side, the materials trader was coming too. Vagabond met the assault outside the gate of her camp, and I put her in block to be prepared to take some heavy hits. Again, I really didn't want her to get too beat up by these guys and end up in slavery, so I chickened out early and had her run. I thought if they followed me long enough, maybe I could take them to Spring, and Tin Fist and the gang would help me beat them up. But all they ended up doing was beating down one of my walls, and so she ran back Naruto style, and by the time she got back, the assault had ended. I checked to see if any more raids were coming, and found that the Black Dragon ninjas were next up to raid my base. Looking at the map, I saw that they were moving at pretty much the same rate as the materials trader. While I patiently awaited their arrival, I mined some more copper to sell to the materials trader, hoping I'd be able to get enough building materials to finish these walls. The Black Dragons arrived, and the Hive caravan was right behind them. Because Vagabond had put the majority of her copper ore in the chest inside the shack, she only had one in her inventory to sell, and could only afford 2 building materials, much to my chagrin, so I had her run inside to grab the rest of them when the Hivers and the ninjas started fighting each other. I walked up to the caravan boss mid-fight and sold him the rest of my copper and bought all the building materials I could afford. From what I could tell, the Hivers had done a number on the ninjas, so I told Vagabond to help them out, but not before they knocked out the last one. Seemed like the perfect opportunity to loot a couple of the Black Dragons, since I had a merchant right here, so that's exactly what I did, and I bought some food cubes and building supplies off the caravan boss before they ran off into the night. Vagabond then continued construction on her training camp. On day 22, I took a look at just how disliked Vagabond was across the world of Kenshi. Not sure if it's a me problem or a them problem. And I noticed that bounty hunters were on their way to try and turn her into the United Cities. This I could not allow. I was to be taking them down, not the other way around. They arrived with a quickness, so I devised the same plan I had earlier when the Holy Nation attacked, and made way for spring. The beak things gave me more trouble than the bounty hunters did. I guess they aren't smart enough to chase me into the distance and just tried messing up my base. As soon as I ran through the water, the beak things had lost interest in me, so it was time to finish what I'd started. After going through all the building materials we acquired from the Hive caravan, it was back to the mining grind and a trip to Flats Lagoon. Day 23 was upon us, and Vagabond was chipping away at the old copper ore deposit when a team of hungry bandits came out of nowhere. No big deal, just some more easy XP. We ran them around for quite some time, and when I checked her dodge XP, I noticed that the rate at which she gained experience was hindered by her encumbrance. So we dropped the backpack full of ore, and then continued the 5 Ds of dodgeball: dodging, ducking, diving, dipping, and dodging. I was super pissed when I realized that a few of them had taken up residence in our small shack, but little did they know, I was not trapped in here with them, they were trapped in here with me, or so I was telling myself. So for the time being, I let them stay in the shack. I knew they'd come in handy as a sort of captive group of target dummies. I was focused on finishing these walls first and foremost, totally cleaned out the merchant in Flats Lagoon of all his building materials, and even invested in a second wooden backpack. And I finished my construction in stealth so as not to get ambushed by the squatters in my shack. I needed to put the storm house up so I could fit the bigger research bench inside. And as soon as I began construction on it, the hungry bandits thought it was nicer than my measly little shack, and they went back and forth weighing the pros and cons of both houses before ultimately deciding they liked the storm house best. And that's when I turned block off, and Vagabond's training camp officially became Vagabond's Fight Club. With strength at 23, toughness at 54, and dodge at 22, she could actually handle herself pretty decently now, and land a few punches and low kicks. We repeated this whole song and dance of fight, 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 then run and heal several times. When her condition got pretty low, I told her to lock herself in the shack and turn in for the night. The fight would resume when she was well again. While she slept, the Fight Club members wandered aimlessly around the camp, just waiting for Vagabond to come back and kick their asses. And then I received notice that bandit demands were on their way. That's okay, I thought. The more the merrier in this Fight Club. They made it in no time, and I fought my way across the grounds to let them inside. The door was wide open, and this dude talked a lot of shit before they actually came inside the fight. But once inside, it was a full-blown mosh pit, and Vagabond and I were like the puppeteers pulling their little strings, egging them on. Matrix dodging, can't fucking say it. Matrix dodging weapons, kicking the shit out of their shins, punching them straight in the chest, then running and healing, and then kicking the shit out of anyone who got too close. It wasn't according to plan, but it was most certainly doing the thing I set out to do, which was train combat skills. That's why I love Kenshi, because you can set a goal for yourself, it more than likely won't go according to plan, but when you still see the progress you wanted to achieve, the satisfaction is immense. She'd get knocked down, and then get up again, because they ain't never gonna keep her down. She beat the shit out of cripples because they made easy targets for low kicks, and at the end of the day, Vagabond locked herself in the small shack while both factions of bandits took over the unfinished storm house, and she slept the night away, knowing full well that the next day would also be full of ass whooping. Day 26 was here, and there was more fighting to be had. Vagabond was finally starting to land some good punches on these guys, enough to knock out hungry bandits if she was only fighting 1 or 2. Of course, any more than that and she'd take a nap. At the end of the day, her martial arts had gone up to 8, which is not super impressive by any means, but it's finally enough to actually be able to start winning fights against weaker enemies. I'm hoping next time I'll be able to use the camp as intended, which means it'll be time to start kidnapping nobles. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, dislike it if you disliked it, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye!